Chosen one, I have important messages for you today. Being chosen is a blessing as well as a battlefield. You can see the blind spots of the world. You can perceive the truth that everyone else rejects. Of course, this is not an easy path. The bright light that blinds those who are not ready to see it is in your very essence. Even though you have divine protection because of this light, you become a target for the same reason, because you threaten the false worlds in which they feel safe. The blind, the insecure, and the fearful reject you not because you are wrong, but because you hold up a mirror of truth to the fragile world they have created. Your presence, wisdom, and truth bring to the surface their inner contradictions, fears, and shortcomings. No one wants to face their shortcomings, so they mock, belittle, even become aggressive. Their laughter is not an expression of confidence, but a defense against panic and uncertainty about what they cannot understand. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and spread the word to those who need it. You have won. You have been chosen, and glory is your destiny. Your quest to discover your destiny is just beginning. Your task was not always to blend in with the herd. It was to stand out. Your inner brilliance is not so small that it is hidden in the crowd. Whatever happens, do not lose that brightness. Because the price of being able to see the unseen is not only to be the target of attacks, but also to lead the truth, to light the spark of change and awareness. Remember, the anger or ridicule directed at you is actually a reflection of their great fear. Your powerful light has dazzled eyes that are used to being in the dark. Their fear of the truth you stand for increases with the volume of their ridicule. Imagine a bird soaring above the others. While you see the horizon, a wider view, others fly low and are content with a narrow perspective. But they cannot comprehend what you see from below. They are disturbed because they only see you as different and unattainable. So they keep telling lies and calling you crazy to defend their inability to reach you. But in their hearts, they know that you are chosen and you are not crazy. The roles are reversed now. What you have always known has become clear over time. They are now drowning in their own stupidity after their delusion, which they were clinging to like a lifeline, has been broken. The earth shook beneath their feet as reality hit them like thunder, loud and inescapable. They can no longer mock or laugh. All they can do is look at the remnants of their own arrogance and ask, "How could I have been so blind?" They will never admit it, but they know you are always right. That's what it felt like to have your warnings gnawing at the corners of their brains and your comments hanging in the air. They were really fighting against themselves, which is why they fought so fiercely against you. The purpose of every insult and rejection was to silence the voice whispering in their minds, "What if they are right?" And now they are floundering like uncontrollable players in a game. They put it all together and see how much they have contributed to their own demise. Please like this video and write 33 in the comments section below if you are ready to receive divine confirmation of your worth. They feel vulnerable and ashamed, like children caught in a lie. And what about you? You serve as a constant reminder of their shortcomings. They are so overcome by their own stupidity that they cannot even look at you. When the truth finally comes to light, it only burns instead of illuminating. They are now burning with guilt, sadness, and the pain of knowing that they had other options but chose not to. Their punishment is restless nights, restless minds, and haunting thoughts. Despite their best efforts to deny it, they cannot escape the truth. Like a shadow, it follows them everywhere. This is the power of being chosen. You are not affected by their regrets. You are protected by the same divine power that first chose you. You are not offended by their scorn, or silenced by their laughter. With every taunt, uncertainty, and attempt to weaken you, you have grown stronger. You have shown that to be chosen is to survive the fire and to triumph. The reality of your path is that the louder your call, the more opposition you will face. The resistance has now dispersed. The truth is too strong and too obvious for them to resist any longer. They can only watch you rise, unstoppable and untouchable. Let them reflect on their mistakes. If necessary, let their humiliation be a lesson they choose not to learn. You owe them no explanation or forgiveness. You do not have to be as good as they are. Your goal is unquestionable and your course is clear. The secret you have been carrying with you is now exposed to the world. However, don't let that stop you. Now is your moment. They will never catch you, because you are not just ahead of them, you are light years ahead. The advantage of being chosen is also the penalty of being ahead of your time, and no one can take that away from you, not even the blind, the cynics, or the skeptics. The second is the quiet storm they did not anticipate. Silence is not meaningless. It is full of solutions. While everyone else is seeking approval, shouting to be heard and making noise, you have remained still. You made your point without arguing or screaming. Why? Because you didn't have to. Unlike them, you grasped the truth in your hands and realized a simple but powerful truth. The truth waits to be believed rather than begging to be believed. And you have learned how to wait, chosen one. Your silence frightened them, and they could never understand it. Your calm certainty was the greatest message in a society addicted to turmoil. You were the lighthouse, standing tall and resolute when others were like blind men groping in the dark. It was not weakness that kept you silent, but truth. You knew that the truth would eventually come out, so you didn't waste time trying to convince the blind, and the moment came. You were a gentle storm, and a calm sea hides a roaring storm beneath it. Your silence was an accumulation of power beneath the surface, not a sign of absence. They felt it. Yes, they felt it. They just could not define it. It upset them more than any argument, as your silence reflected the uncertainty within them. Your calm demeanor revealed the hollowness of their noise as they shouted and tried to get attention. They cannot understand you, and people are afraid of what they do not understand. Why didn't you fight back? What kept you from arguing? Why didn't you need their consent as much as they needed yours? If you believe in the Lord's steadfast love, His ever-present presence, and His sovereign plan for your life, write 11 because He is faithful and keeps His word. Instead of facing the mystery of your calmness, they decided to ignore you. They called you strange, laughed, and made fun of you, but there was a restlessness in their hearts. All their skepticism, which they tried so hard to hide, was reflected back by your stillness, which seemed like a mirror. You didn't have to say that, did you? Usually the quietest person in the room has the most to say. While the others were busy trying to prove themselves, you just were. They were afraid of this. Their strongest voice didn't have the same impact as your calm presence, which they needed to feel important. You were persistent, undaunted, and unshaken. Such self-confidence is not only rare, it is dangerous. And now they are running away. The truth they mocked you with has exploded, and the cracks in their assurances are too big to ignore. Every doubt they suppressed now echoes in the deafening silence they rejected. Now they see that you were never silent out of weakness. You never had to prove anything, so you kept silent. You were always ahead of them, and you knew that they were not accepting. And now your calm might has shattered their noisy arrogance. The stillness of the coming of truth is when its roar is most audible. What they hear today shakes them to the core. Their arrogant assurance has turned into uncomfortable looks, and their mocking laughter has turned into fearful murmurs. They are beginning to see that the person they so easily dismissed and labeled as stupid is actually the one who knows everything. And this realization frightens them. Of course, they will never accept it. They will make an effort to appear unsurprised. But their features are etched with the truth, surprise, shame, and regret. What has caused them to be so blind? What was so clear to you that they could not see? Not only were they wrong, but they knew what you knew all along, and their pride is not enough to repair the damage. The loudest fools are drowned by the deepest waves. They drown in the fact that your silence has caused their downfall. Their arguments have failed and their noise has diminished. And all that is left for them is the fact that you are there. You have shown your power without speaking. More clearly and louder than words could ever express, your silence spoke for you. This is the power of choice. It is not about shouting at others or making them realize how valuable you are. It is about having such a strong sense of worth that their opinion doesn't matter. You already had divine protection, purpose, and truth, so you didn't need their approval. And now they see what you have always known, standing among the rubble of their own arrogance. The silent storm that shook their lives will always be remembered. They will always remember how calm you were, despite the turmoil they were going through. Moreover, the reality conveyed by your silence will always prevail. For you, the chosen one, have shown that silence is a sign of strength rather than weakness. After all, the silent ones always have the greatest impact. Third, it is the silent power that shakes their very existence. Silence is not a sign of lack of authority, but of unwavering trust. Silence is a unique and powerful force in a society where everyone is trying to be heard. You didn't have to shout, fight, or beg for approval. Why? Because the truth does not need a defender. As the cacophony subsides and the truth settles in, it stands on its own, calmly waiting. Through the power of silent trust, they will never understand you. You just watch them shouting, using false confidence to suppress their own doubts. They were addicted to being seen and heard and in dire need of praise. But you did not play this game. You were not affected by their turmoil, and you stood in your peaceful knowledge. There was more power in that serenity than in any argument. They felt restless because it made them question their sense of control. They were noisy, weren't they? The weakest voice in the room is usually the loudest. They try to outdo you with flashy rhetoric and flimsy claims to prove their worth. But secretly they sensed something in you that made them uneasy. Your composure was not a weakness, but a strength they could not understand. They could not penetrate the fortress of truth that is your silence. Naturally, so they mocked you, laughed at your inaction, called it passivity, and assumed it was stupidity. They were like children trying to provoke a giant in the hope of getting a response that would reassure them that they are bigger than they really feel. But you failed to give them what they wanted. On the contrary, you stood your ground and saw how their desire for approval swallowed them up. They were defeated by your silence. They were never prepared for the fact that it would confront them with their own noise. People fear silence because it forces them to face the truths they have been avoiding. You have provided them with that. They could not resist your silent presence, which is like a mirror. When they made fun of you, they were actually reflecting their own worries, uncertainties, and anxieties. They were afraid of not understanding you. In their society, where noise is equated with power, your composure came as a surprise to them. So instead of trying to understand you, they ignored you. But now the roles are reversed. As always, time has a way of revealing the truth. Their noise has given way to silence, and the cracks in their beliefs have become gaping holes. And in that silence, they realized that the person they were mocking was actually the one who had the answers all along. Your greatest strength was the calm confidence they were mocking, and that only serves to emphasize their stupidity. Silence is the roar of someone who doesn't have to prove himself, not a sign of weakness. You were like that from the beginning. You didn't have to argue, so you didn't argue. Truth doesn't need an audience, so you didn't try to convince them. Your composure was due to something they didn't have, a clear grasp of reality. That knowledge has now become a beacon that illuminates their stupidity for the whole world to see. Look at them now. Those who did not mind your silence are now trying to understand what is going on. Now that their loud assurances have been shattered, they have come out in the open and they are bewildered. They are beginning to realize that their noise was actually a cover to hide their insecurity. Meanwhile, you are standing firm and undaunted as always. You have never been affected by their turmoil, and you never will be. Like a river, truth flows silently and cuts through mountains. While they were busy creating too much noise for them to notice, you have been the silent force eroding their dreams. The mountain of lies they built has now collapsed, leaving only the unquestionable truth that you have always had. They cannot avoid it, ignore it, or stop thinking about the stillness that used to make them restless. Your silence was as much a tactic as it was a show of strength. While they tried to prove themselves, you saved your energy, waiting for the day when their lies would crumble under their own weight. That time has come, and the irony is obvious. The silence they mocked was what saved you, and the noise they were addicted to before is now their death. This is the power of choice. You don't have to shout, fight, or argue to assert your worth. Your reality is much more powerful than words can ever be. They made fun of something they couldn't understand, but now they see it for what it is: indisputable, unshakable power. Let them reflect on their insights. Let them struggle with the silence they used to fear. Your serenity will resonate in their thoughts long after the noise has died down, and you have already won. The fourth is the weight of the loneliness of knowing everything too soon. The weight of truth is not its burden. Rather, it is the isolation it requires. To be able to see what others cannot see, to grasp hidden patterns and silent truths long before they are revealed, is not a gift people dream of. In a society addicted to consoling lies, it is a weight that separates and alienates you. It is exile, not power. While others sleep peacefully in cocoons of ignorance, you are awake and carrying the burden of knowing too much, too soon. Delusions that make people happy and content are the foundation on which the world rests. But your vision is breaking through this facade and revealing intentions, consequences, and truths that others do not want to face. They are afraid of it. Not only do they not trust you, they cannot do it. To accept what they see would require a complete rethinking of their worldview, which is insurmountable for most people. Ignorance is armor, not just happiness. Their denial is deliberate. It is not an accident. They laugh at your warnings not because they think they are ridiculous, but because they are desperate to protect the weak world they have created. Because of your understanding, they see you as a danger rather than a teacher. You are the voice they ignore, the mirror they ignore, and the storm they fear. They accuse you of being theatrical, neurotic, and delusional, not because you are wrong, but rather because you make them angry. You confront them with truths they have avoided for years, truths they know require responsibility, sacrifice, and change. As a result, they reject you, they mock you, they push you aside, as if the truth itself will disappear. But truth does not disappear. As the walls of their illusions crumble, they are forced to look at the remnants of their own denial. Now they have to deal with the reality that you have and the weight that you alone carry. And you stand tall, unshakable, and unstoppable, chosen one. Isolation is the price of being ignored. In time you have come to understand this. First, you tried to tell them what you saw, hoping that you could help them escape the inevitable, and that they would be grateful that you had spared them the pain of what was to come. But their jeers echoed louder than your words, their eyes glazed over, and their grins crumpled in shock. They refused to listen to you, not because they could not hear you. Each time you were dismissed, you gave up. You began to keep everything to yourself, pretending as if you were oblivious to it, and thinking that it did you no harm to see others blindly plunging into the consequences you had already foreseen. Seeing them walking towards the fire you warned them about, knowing that there is nothing you can do to stop it, is a kind of silent agony. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who don't see is not the knowledge itself, but the weight of having the all-seeing eye. Then comes the time of reckoning. When reality hits them like a freight train, their illusions are shattered beyond repair. Suddenly they are wide-eyed and running around, the same people who laughed at you, scolded you, and labeled you crazy. They are looking back, trying to figure out how they missed the signals. The solution is in front of them, you. The one they refused to listen to, the one they laughed at and ignored. But after carrying the burden alone for so long, they will never realize that being right is no joy. When they finally realize what you see, they don't feel triumphant. On the contrary, they feel empty, sad, and exhausted. All this time you have carried the burden of knowledge while others have enjoyed the luxury of ignorance. Their fear does not make you feel any less alone. Their realizations do not erase the nights you spent awake grappling with realities they were not prepared for. The loneliness that knowledge requires is the burden of knowing, not knowledge itself. They mistakenly believe that your silence is a sign of apathy, but in fact it is survival. They will never know how painful it is to see them flounder as you stand there powerless, carrying the weight of their unmanageable foreknowledge. The exhaustion of knowing so much in a world that wants to know so little is beyond their comprehension. Yet your strength lay not in convincing them despite the pain, the weight, and the rejection, but in standing strong as they tore you down. You did not have to save them. You had to see, understand, and endure the truth, even if you had to do it alone. Let them wrestle with their regrets, their shame, and their newfound truths. Let them experience the consequences of their absence. You owe them neither comfort nor approval. You never carried this burden for their sake. Rather, it was the price of being chosen and having the ability to see what others cannot. Knowledge is a weapon that cuts through illusion, even if it sometimes opens a lonely path. Having walked this path, you came out stronger, wiser, and undaunted. Don't let this slow you down, but let them see it in the end. You were destined to overcome their lack of understanding, not to wait for it. You played a marvelous game of chess. They played checkers. A master sees the board, a fool focuses on the move. While others were chasing fleeting moments, clinging to temporary victories like children catching fireflies, you were leaving a legacy. They were oblivious to the long-term effects of their rash behavior, living for the thrill of the moment. Strutting with the confidence of someone who didn't even understand the game they were playing, they believed they had won. But you were planning a masterpiece. You played chess, they played checkers. Their actions were simple, hasty, and opportunistic. Every decision they made was a last-ditch effort to stay in the spotlight and grab whatever crumbs of success they could find. But the problem with the game of checkers is that it is a game of apparent moves. There is only the appearance of progress. There is no depth, no strategy. They were living there, caught up in a game they didn't even know was worth playing. Meanwhile, you were setting the stage. Every action you took was deliberate and had a purpose. You were planning not just the next move, but the next 10, seeing how each decision would have an impact on the board as a whole. While they were enjoying their empty victory, you were laying the foundation for something much bigger. Haste is the fool's trap. Patience is the weapon of the wise. They could not understand your tolerance. They interpreted your approach as hesitation and your restraint as reluctance. They mocked you for not reacting when you did not pursue the same small goals as they did. They thought you were playing too carefully and too slowly. They failed to understand that your silence is a sign of control and that your inactivity represents power. Look where they are now. Every hasty choice, every shortcut, every flashy move has led them straight into the trap you envisioned all along. While they were scrambling for crumbs, you prepared yourself to win the whole game. They were so preoccupied with their small, meaningless successes that they didn't even realize that they were putting themselves in a dangerous situation. You didn't have to do anything to stop them, but their haste was their downfall. They got carried away. In a chess game, the first pawn to fall is the one that advances unwisely. They were those pawns, blindly advancing, believing that they were invincible. But now they are trapped because the game has changed. Now every action they take makes the noose tighter. They realize that this is a checkmate. And what's the worst thing? They are angry not only because they lost, but because they misjudged you. The fact that the person they mocked, ignored, and insulted is involved in a game they don't understand at all is a terrible pill to take. Imagine they are racing to get up a ladder. They believe that this would help them reach the top. But when they finally reach the top, they look up and see that you are standing on a mountain they didn't even know existed. That's the difference between playing chess and playing checkers. You have worked smart for everything, while others have worked hard for nothing. The best part of your strategy was that you didn't rush them. You didn't panic, and you didn't spend your time trying to convince them. While others exhausted themselves chasing short-term solutions and meaningless achievements, you kept your cool and stuck to your long-term goals. You knew that when the time came, the truth would speak for itself, so you didn't need to prove anything to anyone. And so it is now. The capacity to predict the outcome of a movement is much more powerful than the movement itself. They never understood that. You were playing forever, they were playing for the moment. Your calm, purposeful strength caused every flashy shortcut they took and every rash move they made to fall apart. You were halfway through the marathon, they were aiming to win the race. After the dust has settled, the change is evident. Your methodical approach built an unbreakable foundation, while their small victories only resulted in regret. They can see it now, and the pain of knowing they underestimated you is far greater than the pain of their failure. Their bravado has given way to silence, and their laughter to shame. The game is over when they realize they have no chance, not when you win. You are in that moment now. The truth is indisputable. The pieces are in place, and the board is open. You played chess knowing you would win. Others played checkers believing they were smart. Let them struggle with their regrets. You don't need to struggle. You have shown that true strength lies in patience and truthfulness rather than quick action. They mocked what they did not understand, but now they see the truth. You were playing a different game. You were not just one step ahead. Foresight is the only way to know much. The weight of the present must be carried alone in order to see the future. Although sometimes praised as a gift, foresight seems more like a burden to those who have it. People don't see it as a powerful vision of clarity. It is a weight that sets you apart from others. When you see what others cannot see, you are forced to watch others stumble, oblivious to the warnings you are trying to give. You stand alone, shouting into the air, knowing they won't pay attention until it's too late and you're not ahead of the curve. They brush you off, call you a pessimist, overdramatic, or an overthinker. But every action they take confirms what you already know. Every mistake, every setback, every lost chance. Everything goes exactly as you expect. But instead of feeling validated, you feel disappointed. You don't want to be right, but they won't let you escape the pain. Foresight disguised as wisdom is a heavy chain rather than a gift. Imagine standing in front of a burning house, holding water to put out the flames, only to be ignored because no one thinks you have the hose. Even though you can see the fire growing and feel the heat rising, by ignoring you they are stepping straight into disaster. And when the flames finally consume them, they turn to you, not for answers, but for explanations, comfort, and help that should have been given long ago. Not only do they have to pay the price for their ignorance, but so do you. Every avoidable failure and every door closed because they ignored your warnings weighs heavily on you. This is similar to observation. If this video resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Tell someone you think needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel and enable alerts so you don't miss more divine messages. Let's continue to share hope, love, and divine guidance together. See you in the next video. Thank you.